Well, as always, I've come too far in my daily thought. What that means, I don't know. But ultimately, for me, it's very simple and gets intellectually disformative when you think about all the here and now naysayers unto which could be compromised by their greatest ambitions. But again, I see a commonality between our species, a temptation to rise so far ahead of the rest based on mass production that we exploit the everyday man, the everyday survivalist, the everyday discipliner of oneself, of one's family. You know, what does the Renaissance age mean for modern society? What does AI and capitalist industrial booms mean in a world taken over by mass production of robots and AI systems intelligently for good health and good medicine? Ultimately, to simplify the greatest quo of ensuring anyone who seeks to prove their ambition for intelligence, their discipline in action, their encompassment of protection and nourishment for the children. What does that bring us to? Are we going to create a world into which we never evolve to a debt tenure which globally is far more equal than we ever thought possible? Or do we keep competing in a world to be omnipotent with the value of our monetary, really, paper? What does this paper mean? And now, it's all being digitalized in a world into which we know whether it might be managed by a clerk with a discipline to smile and bring back customers, or an AI unit to simply and basically deliver a source of mass production. In a world where the majority no longer has a job other than to think about their family, to think about what's righteous, what's fair, what's sensible. How a modern construct of having everything we could ever imagine is no longer a competition, but the righteous endeavors of science and technology only ingratiate our over capacity to supply, to enrich our lands agriculturally, brilliantly, tastefully, to defend our cultures, our creationisms as they were, our ways of life. Is it scary to produce a world with no jobs? Or is it benevolent if you can construe it without the interest to form a world into which definitive practices ingratiate those in control to stay their ancestry in that certain place? To me, in a modern world, you know, everyone's time is equal. Everyone's sense of individuality is great. Everyone's encompassment of practice to ingratiate our time with not over luxury, but consideration for having that time into which we are challenged and having that time into which we can release, but ultimately to have that time into which we can socially love and indulge in a socialization that never separates. I mean, to never separate is impossible based on circumstances of vanity. In a world where dominance is never seen by variables into which one creates, to some degree, in my opinion. But without creating artificial sentience, which ultimately we have to start considering have feeling, can we not create AI systems and robots which take on the hard-bearing aspect of the world, where we now become both male and female, interested in principally the art of life, the art of challenging and releasing our time spent in practices which ingratiate our social context, deliver us out of false temptations, and ingratiate a possibility of society into which we never knew, without becoming some sort of Borg, if you will. I think it's very possible. I think it's very possible in the coming centuries we will find a world into which modern society is a never-ending epicenter of learning and disciplinary practices, from martial arts to yoga to gardening, to interests into which are also just basically memorizing, learning, grasping, synergizing, socialized principles into which we develop self, we develop one, we develop an interest, into which jealousy becomes an erroneous variable in our emotional complex. Yet, there will have to be a few who are above them all to organize, ultimately, the variables into which we retain an ultimate democracy of singeing together our thought, our discipline, our craft, and not disengaging scientific technological advancement through the ambition of profiteering, which sounds totally extreme in a modern world, which is complexly unified by ingratiating one's wallet through organization skills and effective, efficient models of production and service, will there not be plenty of therapists in a world into which jobs are no longer, where without a social context we have someone to open up to without releasing our sort of ungracious observations of concern and confusion amongst our own social bodies through therapy? You know, we seek therapy through our friends mostly, and that's a great thing. It should never stop. But should we not ultimately all have a consistent mental outlet under which keeps our greatest confusions and cynical perspectives on the variables we can't allow our social systems to grasp? We see in our variables of growing intelligences in a manner into which can soothe us into becoming the therapists inside of our social systems, to awaken those who might be blind without monotonizing our everyday process of interest. Who knows? Who knows? These are far, far foresighted concepts which eventually, if too quickly sought, could turn us into the worst Legoland of them all. But, based off all those Zionist constructs into which one day robots and AI systems fuse a less emotional and easily less monotonous industrial specialization and production line construct into a world into which we focus on procreation, hopefully not to grow, but the population, but to maintain the population, as it were, and have such little risk in our everyday lives that very few imagine a world where crises of death happen without terrible, terrible circumstance. I mean, once we look back at the Wild Wild West, only the 1800s, the amount of death from disease, from accidents, from less safe construction worlds is unthinkable to our modern day, especially here in 2020. But they had a less monotonous life, they had a greater challenge, and that made it more fun. But they didn't have the security to enrich their emotional state to really think about greater natures of nurture and protection to our intellectual capacities of child raising, so that they aren't taken down over a long life by chemical imbalances from environmental discongruent circumstance that overall take out their brain cells. A lack of alcoholism because stress becomes a foreign concept in a world where we're just, not overburdened by everyday monotony, which we seem to be challenging ourselves to create greater and greater through specialization as these robots ourselves. It's difficult to comprehend, but ultimately as our identities become driven through the people we seek to be, not the people we seek to conform, a unity will be had, in my opinion, which is so righteous that the savagery of our past will become almost a animal-like existence to our modern future. You know, if we can make red meat with vegan variables as good as the chicken bites from Whole Foods, so be it. We never have to be savage towards the mass production of animals ever again. While inquisiting and, I don't know, getting a sense and Tao to get off of being meat eaters even. How wonderful would that feel? How wonderful would that be for a modern child contextually grown up in a world where they know they have to sacrifice something which once was inside themselves, an emotion, a sense, a life, a family, so animal and prehistoric to them, but still something they don't want to survive off of anymore. But again, by the way, if you want to know how good vegan meat inventions can be, go to Whole Foods. I shit you not. The chicken nuggets, vegan chicken nuggets, try them out. They are as good, if not better, than the taste of chicken. And they're healthier. It's so crazy. It's like, dude, who would have ever thought that eating a piece of, I don't know, veggie burgers with big pieces of corn bits in them? But a world without violence. How brilliant could that be? How magnificent if we could be at peace with two children, a family. You know what I mean? I mean, it never has to be exact, it never has to be perfect, but, you know, as a camp counselor, I once got a soda at a laser tag place, and I was, the main camp counselor was like, well, the kids can't do that, so don't do that in front of them. Like, oh yeah, I can sacrifice a soda, you're right, that was stupid. How much less stressful would the concept of starting a family be if you only had to focus on two units, two child units? You know, those are really weird points. This is philosophy too far and gone wrong. Because it questions the savagery we once and continue to live in, which gave us everything we have today. But how brilliant could that be? How quickly would we be able to get to the other planets to colonize this totally unviolent new synergy and individuality of personal development, this never-ending renaissance, and create a social link amongst each other, an interconnection, an interwoven reality, a life unto which we never stopped loving everybody. If that's not what Christ came to prove, what else did he? I mean, at one point it had to do with taking on his last name. But at this point, it could and most likely will become so much more profound than just that.